4:35 a.m., August 30th, 2025. The calm waters of the South China Sea erupted into chaos. From Fiery Cross Reef, 300 kamikaze drones rose like a black storm cloud, engines buzzing, warheads armed. Moments later, the Chinese destroyer CNS Kunming fired 4 YJ-18 supersonic missiles, each capable of striking with the force of 10 tons of TNT. Their target? The USS Ronald Reagan, a 100,000-ton American carrier, home to nearly 5,000 sailors. What followed was unlike anything seen in modern naval warfare. Radar screens bled with red markers. Sirens wailed across steel decks. The world's most advanced defensive shield prepared to meet a storm of steel and fire. Would America's layered defenses hold? Could a billion-dollar fortress survive a sea of cheap drones and missile fire? And what price would China pay for daring to cross a line no adversary had touched in decades? Stay with us. The battle is about to begin. August 30th, 2020, 160 nautical miles west of Fiery Cross Reef, Spratly Islands, South China Sea. The USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group was cutting through international waters at 28 knots, a formation of steel and firepower valued at nearly $30 billion. Led by a 100,000-ton nuclear carrier and flanked by destroyers and cruisers. On paper, its mission was routine patrol. In reality, it was a calculated show of resolve, a reminder to allies that America would not bend under Beijing's maritime intimidation. At 4:35 a.m., the calm broke. From the runways of Fiery Cross Reef, engines whined in unison, one after another. Drones lifted into the dark. Not a handful, not a squadron, but 300 unmanned aerial vehicles, crude and cheap, rising in a mass like a black storm cloud. Each carried 20 pounds of explosive and cost less than $2,000 to build. For the price of a single fighter jet, Beijing had unleashed a swarm designed to engulf the U.S. carrier. Moments later, at 4:42 a.m., the destroyer CNS Kunming, a modern Type 052D warship, joined the assault. From its launch cells, 4 YJ-18 anti-ship cruise missiles ignited, streaking across the horizon. Each carried a 660-pound warhead, each capable of accelerating to Mach 3 in its final dive, tearing across a football field in under a second. Their guidance systems locked on one target, the USS Ronald Reagan, CVN-76, and the nearly 5,000 sailors aboard. The numbers alone were staggering. In less than 10 minutes, Beijing had hurled a mix of drones and missiles worth barely $600,000, a cut-rate strike package aimed at destroying billions in American naval power. China believed sheer volume would overwhelm even the most advanced defenses. But the true shock was not the scale, it was the recklessness. By launching directly from a fortified island and a frontline destroyer, Beijing crossed a line no rival had dared to touch in decades. 4,900 American lives were suddenly in the crosshairs. Sirens blared across the Reagan's decks. Off-duty sailors leapt from their racks, and within seconds manned their stations as radar screens lit up with a wall of inbound threats. Before we reveal how the crew responded, consider this. What would you do if you were aboard that ship? The incoming swarm closed the distance in less than 7 minutes. On the radar displays of the USS Ronald Reagan, CVN-76, the screens bled with red markers. Hundreds of contacts moving in tight formation, layered by altitude. 300 drones at low level, 4 supersonic missiles at high. For any other Navy, this would have been the moment of annihilation. But the United States Navy carried with it the most advanced defensive shield on Earth. Within seconds, the escorts came alive. 2 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, USS John Finn and USS Higgins, activated their Aegis combat systems. Each system could track more than 300 targets at once, an electronic brain built to fight swarms. The order rang out: engage all inbound. From vertical launch cells, 40 SM-6 interceptors roared skyward at Mach 3.5, covering nearly 2 miles every second. They struck the YJ-18 missiles head-on, detonating with the force of 250 pounds of TNT each. Explosions ripped across the night sky like miniature suns, blinding flashes that reduced Beijing's so-called carrier killers to flaming debris. In less than 90 seconds, all four were gone. The drones pressed on. At 10 miles out, evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, ESSM, slashed into the swarm, wiping out dozens. Still they came. Then the close-in weapons took over. Failing CIWS cannons, 6-barrel Gatlings, spun up to fire 4,500 rounds per minute. That's 75 bullets every second, each a tungsten dart shredding metal and circuits. Guided by MQ-25 Stingray drones, the guns turned the air into a solid wall of lead. Drones exploded in sheets of fire, raining wreckage into the sea. Out of 300 launched, 299 were obliterated in less than 4 minutes. Only one slipped through, a ragged survivor diving toward the Reagan. It detonated just 200 yards from the port side, unleashing a fireball that rocked the 100,000-ton carrier. Bulkheads rattled, lights flickered, sailors were thrown off their feet. One American was wounded. Damage to the ship? Minimal. When the smoke cleared, the numbers were staggering. Out of 304 inbound threats, 303 were destroyed. China had invested hundreds of machines and millions in logistics, only to scratch paint and injure a single sailor. Tell me this, if you were on that deck, watching 300 red blips vanish one by one, what would you feel? Fear or absolute confidence in the shield around you? At 5:05 a.m., August 30th, 2025, the order left the Combat Information Center of the USS Ronald Reagan. Execute retaliation strike. Beijing's swarm had failed. Now the answer would come with American steel. From the depths, 2 Virginia-class submarines, USS Illinois and USS Missouri, opened their hatches. Together they carried the firepower of a small air force. 24 Tomahawk Block young cruise missiles shot skyward, each a 20-foot spear of steel with a 1,000-pound high-explosive warhead. Flying at 550 miles per hour, they could reach over 1,000 miles with pinpoint accuracies. Each missile cost nearly $2 million, but the destruction they delivered was priceless. Their targets, radar domes, hardened bunkers, and command centers on Fiery Cross Reef, the same island that had launched 300 drones only minutes before. Simultaneously, the Reagan's flight deck erupted with activity. 4 F-35C Lightning, 2 jets, and 6 F/A-18E Super Hornets thundered into the dawn sky. Between them, they carried 36 precision-guided bombs, 24 AMRAAMs, and over 40,000 pounds of ordnance. At cruising speed, each jet covered a mile every 3 seconds. Their mission: suppress air defenses and destroy the CNS Kunming, a Type 052D destroyer that had fired 4 YJ-18 missiles at the carrier. The opening strikes were devastating. At 5:12 a.m., the first Tomahawk slammed into Fiery Cross Reef's radar dome. The explosion consumed $1.2 billion worth of surveillance electronics in a single flash, reducing it to twisted metal. Minutes later, stealth F-35s, invisible to Chinese sensors, dropped GBU-31 JDAM bombs on the island's 3,000-meter runway, carving craters so deep they swallowed trucks whole. Out at sea, the Kunming tried to maneuver. At 7,500 tons, with a crew of 280 sailors, it was one of China's most modern destroyers, a ship that cost $1 billion to build. It did not matter. At 5:18 a.m., 2 Tomahawks struck its bow, igniting fuel tanks. Seconds later, a Super Hornet released a pair of 2,000-pound laser-guided bombs. The blast tore through the superstructure, collapsing radars and splitting the vessel in half. Within minutes, the Kunming slipped beneath the waves, taking its crew with it. Then came the unexpected. At 5:22 a.m., deep inside USS Missouri, a launch system jammed. 10 Tomahawks, worth nearly $20 million, were frozen in their cells. Without them, Chinese command bunkers might survive. For 2 tense minutes, engineers fought the clock. Sparks flew as manual overrides clanged. Finally, with a violent shudder, the system rebooted. The trapped missiles blasted free, rising from the ocean like flaming javelins. The strike snapped back on track. By 5:45 a.m., the results were catastrophic for Beijing. 2 radar stations silenced, 1 runway cratered, 1 destroyer gone. Fiery Cross burned as secondary explosions tore through fuel tanks holding 500,000 gallons of aviation fuel. Black smoke rose 20,000 feet into the morning sky, visible for 100 miles. And yet, the most decisive moment of this battle was still to come. Stay with us. By 5:50 a.m., August 30th, 2025, the U.S. strike shifted from sea to land. The objective was clear: erase China's fortified island chain in the Spratlys. The first targets were the sprawling bases on Fiery Cross Reef, Subi Reef, and Mischief Reef, artificial fortresses bristling with radar arrays, missile batteries, and airfields built at a cost of over $12 billion. From beneath the waves, American submarines launched another 20 Tomahawk Block 5 cruise missiles, each carrying a 1,000-pound warhead. At 550 miles per hour, they closed the distance in under 12 minutes. Their precision guidance systems locked on radar domes, ammunition bunkers, and fuel depots. The skies roared as 2 B-1B Lancer bombers from Andersen Air Base, Guam, entered the fight. Each carried 24 Joint Direct Attack munitions, delivering a combined payload of 96,000 pounds of explosives. In one pass, they could deliver more destructive power than an entire Chinese air wing. At 5:57 a.m., the first impacts shook Fiery Cross Reef. A Tomahawk tore into a 500,000-gallon aviation fuel depot, igniting a fireball that towered 1,000 feet into the air. Secondary explosions ripped across the island as stored munitions detonated, the shock waves strong enough to register on seismic monitors in Manila. On Subi Reef, B-1Bs dropped 2,000-pound JDAMs across the 10,000-foot runway, splitting it open in 3 sections. Chinese J-11 fighters, trapped in their hangars, were incinerated where they sat. Satellite images later showed 7 aircraft reduced to charred skeletons. Mischief Reef fared no better. Its long-range radar station, a $1 billion installation designed to track ships across the South China Sea, was vaporized in a single strike. Without radar, China's southern shield went blind. By 6:05 a.m., all 3 islands were burning. Radar arrays twisted into molten steel. Hangars collapsed into smoking craters. Black plumes rose 20,000 feet, visible for more than 150 miles. Beijing had spent decades pouring sand, concrete, and billions into these artificial strongholds. In less than 15 minutes, American firepower reduced them to smoldering ruins. The island chain that once symbolized China's ambition now stood as a monument to miscalculation. By mid-morning on August 30th, 2025, silence returned to the South China Sea. The roar of engines and the thunder of detonations faded, leaving only a horizon smeared with smoke. What remained was devastation and a message no one could ignore. China's gamble had come at a staggering cost. In less than 2 hours, Beijing had lost 1 Type 052D destroyer, valued at nearly $1 billion, and the lives of 280 sailors aboard. Its 3 fortified reefs, Fiery Cross, Subi, and Mischief, had been reduced to ruins, 2 radar stations silenced, 1 10,000-foot runway cratered, over 500,000 gallons of aviation fuel incinerated, at least 7 aircraft destroyed on the ground, billions of dollars in hardened infrastructure wiped out in minutes. Worst of all, the weapon Beijing had touted as a carrier-killer swarm had done almost nothing. Out of 304 inbound threats, 303 were destroyed in flight. The only damage to the USS Ronald Reagan was a single drone exploding nearby, rocking the hull and wounding 1 sailor. A 100,000-ton carrier and nearly 5,000 crew had survived a supposedly unstoppable strike with barely a scratch. The consequences rippled far beyond the battlefield. Tokyo, Manila, and Canberra immediately announced expanded access for U.S. forces to their ports and airfields. NATO issued a rare statement of solidarity in the Pacific. Even neutral states voiced alarm at Beijing's recklessness. China had hoped to intimidate Washington. Instead, it had isolated itself further. The truth was undeniable. America's shield held. America's strike was overwhelming. And Beijing's great gamble collapsed into humiliation. In war, perception is as powerful as firepower. China sought to project dominance. Instead, it revealed weakness. The South China Sea had spoken in fire, and the verdict was final. Striking first without calculation does not bring glory. It brings ruin. By the next sunrise, the battlefield was silent, but the world was anything but calm. What had unfolded in less than 2 hours over the South China Sea now reverberated through capitals across the globe. In Beijing, the scale of the disaster was impossible to hide. State media tried to spin victory, but the numbers told another story. A $1 billion destroyer lost, 3 artificial islands crippled, billions in radar, fuel, and aircraft reduced to smoking craters. By week's end, the Shanghai Composite had shed $620 billion in value, the largest single-week plunge since 2015. The yuan weakened, insurance premiums for shipping through the region doubled, and foreign investors began to quietly pull back. In Washington, the mood was the opposite. Analysts hailed it as proof that U.S. carriers could still sail into contested waters and survive. Pentagon officials briefed Congress that America's layered defenses had neutralized 3 out of 304 threats, an interception rate of 99.7%. The figure stunned even hardened skeptics. Around the world, allies reacted. Tokyo granted permanent basing rights for additional U.S. destroyers. Manila opened 4 more sites for American aircraft. Canberra accelerated joint exercises. Even New Delhi signaled interest in joining a Pacific coalition. For NATO, the battle was so decisive that the alliance issued a rare statement of solidarity in Asia. Beijing had sought to intimidate. Instead, it had triggered a wall of alignment against it. And within China's own military, whispers grew louder. Officers questioned why a fleet of 300 drones and 4 carrier killer missiles had achieved nothing. Billions poured into the island fortresses of Fiery Cross, Subi, and mischief had evaporated in under 20 minutes. The doctrine of anti-access area denial, once Beijing's proudest boast, suddenly looked hollow. The aftershock was global. Markets rattled, alliances shifted, and in the quiet corridors of power, one truth sank deep. The myth of Chinese supremacy at sea had been shattered, not over decades, but in a single morning. By the close of August 30th, 2025, the South China Sea had delivered its verdict. Beijing's strike, intended as a show of dominance, collapsed into humiliation. The cost was staggering. A $1 billion destroyer sunk, 3 fortified reefs shattered, 2 radar stations silenced, a 10,000-foot runway cratered, 500,000 gallons of fuel ignited, billions of dollars in assets erased in less than 2 hours. For the United States, the toll was almost negligible. Out of 304 inbound threats, 303 were destroyed. A single drone explosion rocked the USS Ronald Reagan, wounding 1 sailor but leaving the carrier and its 5,000 crew intact. The message could not have been clearer. America's shield holds. Its strike is precise. Its resolve is unshaken. The battle reshaped more than maps. It reshaped perceptions. Allies rallied tighter to Washington. Neutral states reconsidered their silence. China, once confident in its swarm and its island fortresses, now faced global skepticism and the heavy burden of miscalculation. The deeper lesson is timeless. In war, firepower matters, but perception is power. Beijing sought to terrify. Instead, it revealed weakness. The swarm that was meant to overwhelm became a symbol of futility. The so-called carrier killer that was meant to cripple America left only scratches. The South China Sea spoke in fire, and the world listened. The truth was undeniable. Striking first without calculation does not bring victory. It brings ruin. If this breakdown helped you understand the reality of modern warfare, show your support. Like this video, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to hit the bell so you never miss the next chapter in these unfolding conflicts.